When the fifth brother was born, he received an extraordinary gift on his fifth birthday, 6 remarkable items, each possessing unique significance. The first was a blue candle, vibrant and seemingly alive, which would never extinguish as long as he was living. However, a warning accompanied this gift. If he ever attempted to blow it out, it would unleash a universal catastrophe, creating a ripple through the fabric of reality itself. The second gift was a ring, adorned with intricate designs that whispered secrets older than time itself, secrets from the Omniverse. Yet, among these treasures, the most crucial was the knowledge it revealed about the world surrounding him, a realm known as the Nothingness, a place so void and shadowed that even the gods trembled at its mention. The fifth was destined to be the bearer of the weighty truth of the sleeping gods, deities who resided in a dreamlike state, trapped on the far side of their own racing consciousness. But let us return our focus to Timothy. As he opened his eyes, they widened in surprise, akin to the vibrant orange of a peeled fruit. He found himself levitating above the ground, his small body suspended in the air quite effortlessly. He slowly turned his head left and right, inspecting his surroundings until his gaze froze, captivated by a haunting sight. He was entombed within a grave, surrounded by God's angels and a myriad of demons, each more fantastical than the last. What stood out amidst the somber scene was a house perched ominously on a distant hill. With newfound determination, Timothy pulled himself free from the confines of the grave and scanned the area, searching for any sign of life. "Hello!" he bellowed, the call echoing through the eerie silence, yet met only with the void around him. As he glanced back at his grave, he noticed its shallow depth. It was scarcely filled, as if someone had intended to lay him to rest but abandoned the task midway. Upon closer inspection, he discovered that the graves surrounding him mirrored his own. Each one appeared half-filled, hinting that its occupant was caught in a strange liminal state, suspended between life and death. It was as though the universe was revealing to him that death was merely another facet of existence. Timothy began to walk along the winding trail leading toward the ominous house. At first, he thought he had stumbled into the realm of the dead. However, an unsettling realization soon dawned upon him. This realm felt far darker, more grotesque than merely being among the deceased. The skies above poured down a relentless rain, each droplet heavy with sorrow, yet not a single blade of grass or crop could be seen breaking the surface of the marred earth. The soil was a murky, deep brown tinged with an unsettling hint of red. As he turned his head in a full circle, he felt an unsettling presence in the towering wall that loomed around the place. Was it a creature imprisoned, or an edifice erected to keep something at bay? As Timothy continued along the trail, he could not ignore the bodies lying in repose around him. Each visage was different, unique in its stillness, yet he dared not linger too long on any of them. One figure, however, drew his attention deeply, a tombstone marked with the name Harios. The more he fixated on it, the more he seemed to glimpse the essence of a life lived, each moment, each breath replaying before his mind's eye. Yet beneath it all, he sensed a profound truth, a man ensnared within the confines of a god's body. With pressing urgency, Timothy redirected his focus, channeling all his energy into the path ahead, determined to keep his thoughts away from the spectral figures surrounding him. The journey felt arduous, each step a heavy reminder of his solitude and the weight of his emerging destiny. He paused for a moment, lowering himself to the cool, damp ground as he contemplated a new approach to reach the house that loomed in the distance. As he lay flat on his stomach, the earthy scent of the soil mingled with the fresh air, and he inhaled deeply, feeling the rhythm of his breath ease his mind. Suddenly, a beeping sound pierced the tranquility, reminiscent of an approaching vehicle. Curiosity piqued, he tilted his head slightly to inspect the source, and to his surprise, he saw a go-kart, the kind typically seen gliding across the manicured lawns of golf courses. As the cart came to a halt, he sprang to his feet, heart racing. Stepping out was a peculiar young boy, who appeared to be around 11 years old, yet exuded an odd air of authority. His suit, neatly tailored and crisp, contrasted starkly with his youthful appearance, while his unruly hair fell just enough to obscure his eyes. The hair was jet black and slick, giving it an oily sheen that made his pale skin appear even more luminescent, as if he had emerged from dark waters. Despite his unsettling demeanor, he wore a sweet, innocent smile that wasn't quite reassuring. "Hey, kid, do you know where we are?" Timothy whispered, the words barely escaping his lips as he risked a glance around, anxious that someone might overhear this unexpected encounter. The boy responded with a giggle, placing his clammy palm against his mouth in a comical attempt at silence, then removed it with a serious expression that sent a chill down Timothy's spine. "Welcome to the world of nothingness," the boy announced dramatically, his arms thrown wide as if to embrace the emptiness around them. Timothy studied the boy, an uneasy feeling creeping over him as the implications of the situation settled in. "Why am I here?" he asked cautiously, instinctively shifting his weight back, ready to flee if necessary. "Oh, I can answer that," the boy replied, stepping closer with a certain eagerness. "You are here because you are bound to Eden, the god of man. And since you are bound to a god, that makes you technically a god, or, in a way, a demigod," he explained, twirling his hands as if trying to illustrate the gravity of Timothy's supposed divine status. Timothy's mind reeled at the boy's words, a growing sense of dread swirling within him. "But that's not the most important thing right now," the boy continued, his tone shifting to a more urgent pitch. "The most important thing is to get you back to your grave and put you back to sleep. I'm not even sure how you're up in the first place," he added, flailing his arms in exasperation. "And you are the god of this place." As the boy's proclamation hung in the air, Timothy felt a mix of confusion and apprehension, uncertain of what awaited him in this strange, unsettling realm. Timothy glanced around, taking in his surroundings. "Of course I am," the boy declared confidently. "I'm the only person here. Well, not anymore, since you've shown up, but technically, you aren't supposed to be awake." The boy took a step closer to Timothy, extending his hand for a firm handshake. Timothy hesitated but eventually accepted the gesture, feeling the boy's confidence radiate through the strength of his grip. As the boy gestured toward a nearby go-kart, Timothy followed his lead. They both climbed into the small vehicle, and the boy revved the engine before steering them down a winding trail. As they sped along, the boy began to speak, his voice blending excitement with a hint of seriousness. "I know you probably don't know anything about me, but I'm a yellow god, aka the fifth omnipotent guardian. This is where gods, demons, angels, and demigods are punished to sleep for eternity." Timothy furrowed his brow, absorbing the weight of the boy's claims. "If you're omnipotent, can't you just bring me back home?" he asked skeptically, testing the boundaries of the boy's proclaimed powers. The boy suddenly slammed the brakes, putting Timothy on the edge of his seat. "I can't. I only control this world," he said, frustration creeping into his voice. "I'm not really the omnipotent. I'm just a piece of him, kind of nigh omnipotent. Here, I see, I hear, and I feel everything. But in your world, I have no power. I can die just like anyone else, following the laws of the universe. Not to mention my brother, the serpent, who would come for me and devour me whole." Timothy stared at him, bewildered. "But you're a fragment of this omnipotent being," he argued, trying to reconcile the information. The boy nodded solemnly. "That's true, but we're all bound by something to varying degrees. For instance, my brother, the serpent, is mindless. He just consumes whatever he finds, indiscriminately. Then there's my other brother, creation, who is arrogant and behaves much like a man. Destruction is similar in nature. My sister, the void, lacks a physical form entirely. And I can't forget my favorite brother, judgment. He cannot hear or speak, which is why his right-hand man always acts as his voice." Timothy leaned back slightly, a smile creeping across his face. The boy noticed and smirked slightly in return. "I know what you're thinking. It's a good thing that not all powerful beings are truly all-powerful." Timothy turned his gaze away, contemplating the scenery around them. "What is Eden like, if you don't mind my asking?" the boy queried. "Can't you read my mind?" "I think you already know the answer," the boy smirked again. "Eden is difficult," he explained, turning to look Timothy in the eyes. "He has existed for centuries, knowing nothing but his singular purpose, to protect humanity before humanity even became what it is today. What you have to understand is that once you occupy such a position of authority, you begin to believe you are the only one who knows what's right. Eden as a god, he falls short like any man. He has flaws, mistakes, anger, sadness, and even moments of joy." As the boy spoke, he leaned in closer to Timothy, who now faced him directly. "Eden really does care for you," the boy continued, his voice softening. "But he has a lot to learn, even after all this time." They soon arrived at a small house, and the boy hopped out of the go-kart, swinging open the front door to invite Timothy inside. As Timothy stepped over the threshold, he surveyed the modest interior. The house lacked an upstairs. Instead, it featured a flat surface above. One side had a small kitchen, while the dining area was connected to it. The living room dominated the space, its high ceiling imparting an unusual look from the outside. The boy made his way over to a worn couch and sank into its cushions, observing Timothy's reaction. "You were expecting something bigger, weren't you? I've always preferred smaller things. They're easier to focus on." Timothy nodded in agreement, contemplating the cozy setting. "What's it like here?" he asked, curiosity threading through his voice. The boy responded with a single word: lonely. Timothy shifted his focus from the decor back to the boy. "How do I get out of here?" he inquired, a sense of urgency underlying his tone. With a sudden burst of energy, the boy jumped to his feet, striking a peculiar pose with his hands on his hips. "For Eden and your rebellious friends to wake you up," he declared, as if delivering the solution like a riddle. What was unfolding outside the confines of Timothy's consciousness was far beyond anything I could have anticipated. Reality had begun to fracture around us, and we stood, helpless witnesses to the unraveling. A thick, unspoken tension filled the air, dense and suffocating, like the pressure before a storm. Our thoughts moved in a closed loop, haunted by the same questions. What could we do? How could we save him? Chris, unable to bear the weight of that silence, began to drift away from the center of the chaos. His movements were slow, distracted, as though his mind was grasping for anything tangible to hold on to. He wandered through the house with the aimlessness of someone trying to outrun their own panic. Eventually, his steps took him toward the staircase. Each footfall on the stairs echoed like a countdown, heavy with foreboding. As he ascended, the air grew stiller, thicker, as though the house itself were holding its breath. The hallway upstairs was dim and cloaked in a strange hue, cast by the grimy red blinds that veiled every window like a shroud. The blinds weren't just dusty, they were caked with an old, dry grime that looked almost burned. Chris approached one of the windows cautiously, his hand trembling slightly as he reached to part the slats. He hesitated. Some instinct told him not to look. But curiosity won out. He tilted one blind, just enough to peek through. The light that poured in was alien, sickly, and red, bleeding into the corridor like it had been waiting for the chance. Outside, a barren wasteland stretched in every direction, scorched and lifeless, the sand cracked and bleeding rust-colored dust into the air. It might have looked like a desert on Earth, except for the sky. It hung over everything like a warning. A red sun, unnaturally large and burning with a silent fury, floated above the horizon, pulsing faintly, like it was alive. Not warm, not life-giving, but oppressive. Watching. And that's when Chris realized. He wasn't on Earth. He was home, but not the home he remembered. Not the one from dreams or photographs. This was something else, twisted and hollowed, like a version of home that had been left out too long in a nightmare. Two thoughts clashed in his mind, each screaming louder than the last. Get out. While you still can. Or stay. Try to save them. All of them. But before he could choose, before he could even breathe properly, the staircase was gone. He turned, and where the stairs should have been was just a blank wall. No banister, no landing. Nothing. Panic surged through him, primal and suffocating. He flung open doors, searching room after room, the house now morphing into a labyrinth of dead ends. The windows no longer showed the outside world. Just static. Like the glass itself had gone blind. Meanwhile, back downstairs, Grace and I remained frozen in place. The room seemed to vibrate faintly with tension. No sound, no movement. Just that deep, unsettling stillness that made every breath feel like a risk. Our eyes kept flicking toward Timothy's still form, praying for a sign, a twitch, anything. Lane was the only one with focus. He stormed into the kitchen with the urgency of a woman chasing the last thread of hope. Cupboards banged open. Glass jars rattled. The scent of herbs, sharp sage, musty lavender, crushed basil, mixed in the air like a desperate spell of their own. He muttered to himself under his breath, fingers shaking as they measured, mixed, searched. Grace's voice broke through the silence, barely more than a breath. "I didn't know my mother could cast spells like this," she said. Her eyes were wide, stunned, as if her mind was only just catching up to the horror of the moment. I looked at her, unsure of what to say, the weight of everything pressing down like a collapsing ceiling. "I didn't either," I said softly. "You never really know the depth of someone's powers. Until you're drowning in them." Her gaze dropped, but the truth hung between us like smoke. thick, toxic. Then, the ground trembled. Not like an earthquake, this was different. It was as if something below the floorboards had stirred, hungry and restless. The house groaned, deep and low, as if reacting to our realization. My heart pounded in my chest. I turned sharply, scanning the room. Something was off. Off in a way that prickled the skin behind my neck. Where was Chris? He'd been here only moments ago, wandering off as we focused on Timothy. I spun around, half expecting him to reappear at the base of the stairs. But the stairs were empty. Chris! I called out, my voice sharp, too loud against the silence. The word echoed strangely, as though the house itself swallowed it whole and gave nothing back. No answer. Just stillness. And then I noticed it, the strange quietness of the house. No creaking floors. No ticking clock. Even the lights seemed dimmer. The familiar comfort of the living room had been replaced by a subtle wrongness, like a dream that had slipped into a nightmare without you realizing. Everything around us, every object, every shadow, felt like it was watching, waiting. And that's when I knew. We were no longer in a place governed by natural rules. We were in someone else's design. And the question was no longer just how to save Timothy, it was how to survive this place. The painting on the wall hung at a slight angle, just crooked enough to disturb the symmetry of the room. It had always been like that, never quite level, never fixed, as if mocking my sense of control. Below it, the red cup sat in its eternal place on the shelf, untouched, unmoved, unchanged, like a memory too stubborn to fade. It was in that moment, as I took it all in, that the air shifted. Before I could even lift my hands, a force, a violent, invisible current, ripped through the room and snatched me from the floor. My limbs jerked helplessly. My scream was swallowed whole. My vision warped, folded, turned inside out, and suddenly, I was small, trapped, sealed tight within a glass jar. And in front of me stood Hex. Only she wasn't Hex, not at first glance. She wore Lana's face, Lana's smile. But it was just that, a mask. A facade crafted too perfectly. Her eyes gave her away. Cold, calculating, and ancient. Eyes that had seen too much and regretted too little. That's when it struck me. Hex had escaped Catapino. But how? She didn't know that kind of magic. No one did, except those who created the prison itself. My thoughts raced, but there was no time. I was here. She was here. And Grace, poor Grace, was standing only a few feet away, her back tense, her breath short. Grace stumbled backward, disbelief unraveling across her face. How? Never mind that, child, Hex snapped, her voice laced with a sugary venom as she began to turn, her long, glistening braids swinging like a pendulum. Her tone was cruel, snarky, and calculated. Grace, trembling with rising panic, reached behind her blindly and grabbed the first book her fingers landed on from the dusty shelf. She hurled it forward with all the strength she had left, but it missed. It sailed clean through Hex's hair, barely disturbing a strand. Hex's head turned, slowly, deliberately, like a predator catching the scent of prey. From the corner of her left eye, she locked on to her daughter. "This is for your own good, Grace," she said coldly. "You don't understand what I've sacrificed to bring you here." Grace's lips trembled. Her fists clenched at her sides. Her throat tightened, but she didn't hold it back anymore. She couldn't. "I know," she whispered, then louder. "I know what you did to my parents." Her voice cracked, thin and raw. "You destroyed their town. You stole me from them. You stole me." The last words escaped as a sob, her tears falling quietly, but with the weight of years behind them. Hex's gaze lowered. For a brief second, a shadow of remorse flickered in her eyes. But she buried it, swallowed it, refused to let it grow. It was more complicated than that. "No!" Grace shouted, cutting her off. "No. There's nothing to explain." She took a step forward, then another, her finger raised like a weapon pointed straight at Hex's chest. "There's nothing to explain," she repeated, her voice now trembling, but firm. "Look at you. Hurting my friends. Manipulating everything. And for what? Don't you dare say it's for me. Don't you dare twist this into something noble. She paused, her voice dropping into a hollow whisper. My whole life, everything I've ever been, has revolved around you, she said, her voice trembling as her hands clenched at her sides, reenacting every single moment like it was yesterday. I was like your shadow, always behind you, moving when you moved, frozen when you froze. I didn't even have a choice. Her voice cracked, and she took in a ragged breath. The words felt like they were being torn from her soul. Whenever you wanted to disappear, I disappeared. Whenever you wanted me close, I was suddenly there. I was your puppet, your ghost, never my own. She paused, the weight of her life spent in someone else's orbit pressing down on her shoulders. For a moment, it looked as if she might stop, might break. But then her eyes lit with fury, and the final blow left her lips like a blade. You're a murderer, a child thief, and worst of all, you are a monster who hollowed me out so you wouldn't feel empty inside. But listen to me now, my life, my existence, no matter how much you try to consume it, will never be the cure for the void inside of you. You can steal as many lives as you want, take as much land, claim as many souls, but you will always be that small, scared girl in the dirt, begging to matter. The words hung in the air like thunder, and then, without warning, she, Hex, in whatever shape she had taken, moved. It was sudden, a flash of violence. A single slap cracked through the air like a whip, and Grace's body crumpled to the ground, limbs folding beneath her as if she were nothing more than a marionette whose strings had been violently cut. It was like she hadn't even meant to do it. There was no calculation in the act. Just instinct. Just something primal and ugly, rising to the surface. Grace lay there, one hand pressed tightly to her cheek, stunned more by the truth than the blow. The sting in her skin was nothing compared to the pain in her chest. Pain from hearing the truth. Pain from finally seeing the monster in someone she once loved. I did, Hex said, voice quiet but sharp, as if peeling the skin off a secret. I did take you from those people. But what you don't know is, they're still alive, Grace. Grace blinked, confusion blooming in her swollen, tear-filled eyes. They weren't your parents, Hex continued. They were bounty hunters. Scavengers. They sold you to me. I was searching for a child to raise, someone to carry on what I couldn't. I couldn't bear children. But I could raise one. When they saw me, they recognized me. They tried to kill me. I had no choice. Hex stepped closer, crouching down to Grace's level, and gently gripped her arm. Her voice shifted into something that almost sounded like affection, twisted, manipulative affection. They didn't want you. I wanted you. I took you because I saw something in you, and she paused, searching for a justification that didn't sound as hollow as it felt. They didn't care. Grace yanked her arm away, her skin crawling at the touch. She stood slowly, her expression a quiet storm of disgust, betrayal, and clarity. She had always known, somewhere deep inside. But hearing the truth from her, tore through whatever thin thread of hope she had left. You're still lying, Grace whispered, voice shaking, eyes rimmed red with tears. You've always lied. Every story. Every moment. You're not protecting me. You never were. You caused this. All of this. You built the madness and called it love. She backed away, one step after another, her shoulder dipping as if preparing to flee or fight. Hex straightened, eyes flashing. Girl, stop being foolish, she said, her voice tightening. You think you're in love now? With some boy you've known for, what? A moment. You've barely said 7 words to him, and suddenly you think this is your story. Grace didn't flinch. Not this time. I know the girl, she said, her voice low but unwavering. The one you fear. The Vulu. I'll find her, and she'll stop you. Hex opened her mouth to retort, but in that instant, reality fractured. Everything dissolved around Grace, the house, the heat, the twisted woman who still wore the face of someone she once trusted. It all shattered into smoke. And then, she was sitting in the back seat of a bus. The hum of the engine. The faded green vinyl seats. The world outside is passing by in slow motion. On her right, Eden leaned against the window, eyes closed, a faint bruise at her temple. On her left, Chris sat in silence, staring at his hands like they didn't belong to him anymore. Across from them, in a narrow bed of glass, Timothy lay still. His body curled slightly to the right, eyes closed, as if asleep or dreaming far away. But Grace wasn't sure if they had escaped, or simply passed into the next layer of the trap. His eyes fluttered open slowly, as if waking from a dream too heavy to leave behind. The soft golden light of morning slipped through the bus window, casting delicate streaks across his face and bathing everything in a fragile warmth. His lashes blinked against the light, and he inhaled deeply, the kind of breath that only comes after escaping something dark. She sat beside him, watching him wake with silent reverence. She traced every line of his face with her eyes, the gentle slope of his brow, the faint crease between his brows that only appeared in sleep, the way his lips curled naturally even in rest. Outside, the landscape shifted, trees whipping past in blurs of green and gold, until a bold flash of color caught her attention. A road sign stood tall outside the window, bold white letters printed on a gleaming green background, "Welcome to Tennessee." A jolt of joy surged through her. It was real. They were really out. Her body acted on instinct. She turned toward Timothy, unable to contain herself, and threw her arms around him. Her kisses fell across his cheeks like scattered petals, soft and grateful. He stirred again, this time faster, eyes flickering open fully now, catching the light and catching hers. A grin broke across his face, boyish and full of life, and then laughter. It spilled out of him, unguarded and free, rising in the quiet hum of the bus like sunlight pushing away the fog. But beneath all of this warmth, this impossible, glowing moment, I felt it, a deep, growing unease. I stood up quickly, my body tense before my mind even caught up. My heart thudded against my ribs as I turned, eyes combing the dim corners of the bus. I knew better than to trust peace. Hex had a way of hiding where no one should be. She had mastered the art of slipping into the quiet, always just out of sight, waiting. My gaze lingered on the back row for a beat too long, as if expecting her to emerge from the shadows like smoke. But she wasn't there. At least, not visibly. I turned back, uneasy, and my eyes caught them again, Grace and Timothy. Still wrapped in each other. Still breathing in the same air, like they were trying to memorize one another before it all slipped away again. They looked like two halves of something ancient, lost souls drawn together not just by love, but by survival. They hadn't just found each other. They had fought for each other. I used to think love was foolish, an impulsive, messy thing that led people into blind decisions and ugly heartbreak. Something too delicate for the kind of world we lived in. But watching Timothy now, watching the way his hand rested on Shin's as though it anchored him to reality, I understood something I hadn't before. Love had brought him back. Not magic, not power, not strategy, her. And somehow, in that truth, something in him had healed. I turned to Chris, who had been silently observing everything, his shoulders still tense but eyes softer than I'd seen in days. The way the morning light hit him, he looked like a kid again, like the version of him before all this started. A smile crept onto my face, uninvited but welcome. "It's time," I said gently, stepping closer to him. "Time for you to learn how to harness your power." His gaze snapped to mine, uncertain at first, but then something shifted. His eyes steadied. A quiet confidence surfaced, flickering in the depths of him like the first sparks of a fire. And then he nodded, just once, but it was enough. It was a beginning. For the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself believe. Maybe, just maybe, we could finish this. Maybe we had one last fight in us. One last battle under the sun. One last chance to rewrite the ending. But even as the thought took root in my heart, a shiver slipped down my spine. Because I could feel it, the shadows, gathering again. Like smoke curling beneath a door. Like the breath of something ancient pressing against the back of my neck. Peace, in our world, never lasted long. And whatever waited for us next, already knew we were coming.